G'day everyone, we're back out here today at the location of the Kelly Cahill UFO encounter which occurred on the 8th of August 1993. Now we were out here about 3 or 4 years ago and we did a special that went into great detail about the details of the case, and recently with the new X-Files Series 10 the case happened to get mentioned again by Fox Mulder, and he refers to the Kelly Cahill encounter in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. And that was a very, very interesting reference because the case has died to a certain extent over the preceding years since 1993. So with the mentioning of it on the X-Files, it has actually brought it out again, and people around the world are again curious as to the case and what happened, and potentially, you know, what everybody who was involved is doing now. So today we've come out here to the exact spot. So we're standing here in the area where Kelly and the other 2 cars would certainly have been on that cold night on the 8th of August 1993. So today's a lovely sunny day and the area is actually quite built up now. So as you can see behind me, there's still a fair bit of open farmland, but since 1993 the area has been built out quite considerably. There's more hobby farms here, more houses have gone up, and as you would expect, as a city grows, so has the area. But in 1993 it would have been fairly much country around this area here. It would have been dark, would have been quiet, so nowhere near the amount of cars that we're seeing here today on the Belgrave-Hallam Road. So behind me in this paddock out here is where the object was. It was about 170 metres behind me, perhaps a bit off to the right. And it was as large as an Olympic swimming pool, lit up with orange lights, and about the size of a 2 to 3 story house. So it was a very big object, and the cars basically pulled up on the opposite side of the road to where I'm standing, and the people crossed over to where I am now in 3 separate groups. They didn't come together. They did stand in separate groups. Kelly and her husband, Jane, Bill and Glenda further down, and then a guy called David behind them. So on that night it was really was a close encounter, and the case really had everything in it. So it had missing time, it had trace evidence, it had scoop marks and scarrings and puncture marks on the witnesses. It really was a case that occurs once every 20 years or so. So we haven't had one since that time that has been to the same standard, and that's where this case potentially has the best chance to be one of the best cases in the world, and stands as one of the few examples where you've had independent witnesses who didn't know each other all being at the same place at the same time. So that's really one of the key aspects of this case. In the area where I'm standing here is approximately the area where Kelly would have walked across the road across to the fence. And behind me down the road, a little bit further down over here, would have been where the 2nd and 3rd car were parked. So there's quite a big nature reserve across here to the fence, but where the road is, it's actually there's not much room to park on that side of the road. So they would have parked on that side of the road, crossed over this drain here that runs down the side of the Belgrave-Hallam Road, and then proceeded across in front of me here to the fence line where they looked, and the other cars stopped just down here, and they also got out, and everybody looked across here towards the west to see the object that was most certainly hovering in the sky and couldn't be missed on that night. As Kelly and Andrew were travelling along the Belgrave-Hallam Road, she recounts in her book that they reached a point where they passed through a white wall of light. And when they passed through the white wall of light, it was as if she'd actually been turned off. She described that it wasn't like time stood still, it was like they had actually been turned off. And they were travelling at about 100 kilometres an hour. And when they came through this wall of light, they were travelling at 40 kilometres an hour, and they felt very disorientated, and there was a strong odour in the car, very much similar to vomit. Now, Kelly also related that she doesn't remember passing through a roundabout on the way down that they would have passed through. And I'm standing now at the location of that roundabout. So this is the roundabout that car should have come through after passing through the wall of light, and she has no memory of passing through it. So at this point in time, either the time's gone, there's been a time-space continuum thing that's happened, whatever they've done, the vehicle did not pass through this roundabout, or she has no memory of the vehicle passing through a roundabout. Now up here, we'll show you shortly a shot of the hill that she would have come down, and the road up to Belgrave South is fairly windy and quite steep. So when they've passed through there, it perhaps is no accident that where the spacecraft put up the wall of light, she's come through on the other side of this roundabout, which is a nice straight stretch of road. So when they've come out, the road is nice and straight. So when they've come back to consciousness and orientation again, they've come through onto a straight section of the road. Just something I've noticed standing here in this geographical area, that this side of the hill is quite steep and quite windy. Down here on the other side of the roundabout, it's quite flat and a straight section of road. Crescent-shaped light came out, and it came down in a funnel cone like that. Yeah. Blue iridescent light.
Sure.
And down here, another car pulled up over here, and a car behind that. So there was 3 cars, 6 people all up.
Yeah.
So she could see that the second group of people had gotten out, and they'd walked over to the fence as well. Now the only reason she could see them was because the third car's headlights illuminated them, so they were silhouettes, and she saw them, and she thought, oh, good, there's other people have stopped. They've seen this as well.
So 2 other cars stopped.
2 other cars stopped. Yeah.
Cool.
So there was.
And were they all pulled along that side?
They were all pulled along this side here. Yes,
as
on that side.
The far side.
The far side of the road.
Cool.
Yeah.
And they've walked across.
And they've walked across.
Yeah.
They come across to here, and then the blue lights come under the object. This is where it starts to get strange. She sees at the bottom of the blue light a tall, 7-foot, skinny, black creature standing there. Then all of a sudden, others start to appear. Okay, this is where it starts to
under
get
the object.
under the object.
Yeah.
About 170 meters it was back into the paddock. Then the eyes on the creatures lit up red, like a stove element.
Yeah.
That color.
Yeah.
They divided into 2 groups, and they didn't run. They floated across the paddock. One group going that way, one group coming this way to where Kelly was. So
how many were there in total?
There was about 8, she said 8 to 10 of those creatures split up into 2 groups.
Yeah.
Then basically what happened then was they felt a force field, she described it as like a bass at a rock concert.
Yeah.
This force came across the paddock, and it hit them in the chest, and they fell over. She was knocked to her feet.
Okay.
And then she lost her sight. She couldn't see.
Yeah.
And the beings were around her and her husband, and the beings started saying things like, she said they were really cliche things that the beings said, like we're a peaceful race, we mean you no harm. And Kelly's husband said, well, why did you knock Kelly over? Yeah. And Kelly started screaming because she's saying these creatures have no souls. She's screaming. Now she had the most violent reaction to the encounter because she was a Pentecostal Christian, so her belief system is around Jesus and devils and things like that. So she saw these creatures as being of the devils. The other people didn't quite have the same experience. They didn't have the hysterical reaction that she had. Now, interestingly, the strength of the entire case is the fact that it has got independent people. That's the entire strength to it. If it was just Kelly talking, sure, it may have happened, but you've got independent witnesses. Now, as they drove home, she had a triangular scar under her belly button down here, and she developed they became very ill, so she had gynecological problems. She was bleeding, and she had to go to hospital for that. The other guys in the other car also had 2 of them had ligature marks around their ankles where they'd been restrained, and they had 3 puncture marks on their inner left thigh. One of the other gentlemen in the second car started suffering severe hair loss. So his hair started falling out. That's some of the physical
So
effects
these marks, and like the mark on Kelly, so she was abducted. So is there like a time there where they can't remember how they got those marks?
Yep, I'll explain how it happened there. When they came down the hill, before the roundabout back up here, they drove into what she described as a white wall of light across the road.
Okay.
So you've got 3 cars travelling together. The second car was actually the first car.
Yeah.
It passed through the light first.
Yeah.
They became disorientated. They felt nauseous, and their car hit a pole. And they stopped on the side of the road. They got out because everybody was feeling sick. Kelly's car and the third car drove past the second car because the people in the second car said they remember the cars driving past.
Yeah.
So, but what happened there was they were going 100 k's down the road. They passed through a white wall of light. They felt disorientated. So from going from 100 k's to 40 k's an hour, and then they felt disorientated, and there was a strong smell of vomit in the car, a really strong odour.
Yeah.
And they couldn't work out where this strong odorous smell was coming from. Then they came and they drove at 40 k's and they just drove home. That's the actual memory she had of the night. Was passing through a wall of light. Didn't recall
Stepping out of the car.
this aspect of it. Didn't recall the other people. Had no memory of that. They got home. There was an hour and a half of missing time.
Yeah.
They got home at 2:30.
Yeah.
So she left at 11:30, 11:45.
Yeah.
Got home to Yallourn at 2:30.
Yeah.
So there's an hour and a half of missing time. So
Is this Kelly?
This is Kelly. Yeah. Kelly and her husband Andrew. That's not their real names. So then the process of recall started to, and they discussed it on the way home because she did see the UFO. She'd seen it on the way up, and they'd seen it just before they saw the wall of light as well. So they did see it, and her husband said, "Yeah, no, I saw it. Yep, saw it." But
they couldn't remember getting out of the car.
They couldn't remember getting out of the car. They had no memory of getting out of the car. So they've gone home, and then she's had a series of 4 visitations in the night, where she's been visited in the night by a tall, skinny being in a black cloak, and she had a strange dream. So those visitations and the dream, and they went to a barbecue at a friend's place, and they started talking about religion, and they started talking about UFOs. And her husband said, and the guy was skeptical. The friend was skeptical. That's all rubbish. And her husband, who was he was a Muslim and she was Pentecostal Christian, so it was quite an unusual mix. He said, "You wouldn't be talking like that if you'd seen what me and Kelly saw." Wouldn't he, Kelly? You know, like that. And Kelly's like, "What did we see? You know, what did we see?" And she said, "Remember, we were out on the road and we saw the." And at that point there,
so he remembered.
He remembered. At that point there, it all started coming back to her. And the following, I think it was the following week, she's back up at her friend's house in Monbulk again. And she's sitting down and she's starting to remember what happened and you know what was going on. She was physically sick. She had the gynecological issues. The other women had gynecological issues as well. So there was these common threads across the people that had been involved.
Did the other people, the other 2 lots of cars, did they have memory lapses, or did they couldn't account for it?
I believe that they did. I haven't spoken to any of these people.
Yeah, sure.
Now they what happened was, once Kelly started thinking, I need to get some help for this. She started looking around she started with like the space societies and things like that. So she rang all them first, and she eventually got put onto a Sydney researcher called Bill Chalker. And she rang Bill and she said, "Look, I've had this experience down here in Victoria. I need someone to, can you help me, or can you recommend somebody?" And at that time, there was another group called Phenomenon Research Australia, which the guy who ran that's name's John Ocatell. Now Bill basically custodied the case to John and Phenomena Research Australia. That's where the research started. He then put some ads in the local paper. About specifically worded about a date, a time, a location.
This wasn't until when?
This would have been. It happened in '93. It would have been '94. 94. I would have reckoned end of '93, start of '94. He placed those ads in the local papers. It'd be worth trying to find them. And people came forward. One car came forward. He was a local bank manager. His wife and their female friend, who was a health professional, were in the car. And the third car was a guy known as David, who was a Victorian government law worker of some description. So he took a lot longer to find. They knew there was a third car there, but they didn't have that person. It was initially just the Cahills, for want of a better word, and then the 3 other witnesses.
What's the idea? So like Kelly's the only one that got abducted, or they all got abducted?
They all got abducted.
Okay, at what point in their narrative do they get abducted?
Well, that's the point where the beams come charging across the paddock.
Yeah.
The base reverb hits them. Yeah. They lose their sight. They can't see, so they're blinded. Okay. So they've effectively been hobbled, stunned, if you like. So they've been stunned by the creatures. Yeah. And then when they wake up. No, they're in the car. Oh, they're travelling back. They're driving, and I'm only making an assumption that was the same for the other people. So, but you said when it hits Kelly, her husband says something to them, or what? Yeah, because the creatures were around them. Yeah. And the creatures started saying things like, "You don't have to worry. We're a peaceful people." She said what they said were really very cliche types of, almost you'd say like they were rote lines. Yeah. We're a peaceful people. We mean you no harm. So that's right before they got abducted. That's correct. Okay, cool. And then that's where the whole thing blacks out. Yeah. And after that, that's where it does get. That's where you had to start doing. You know, like I think she did a regression, which she didn't find the regressions that helpful from what I've read. So they're back in the car, all of them presumably have been put back in the car, and the next thing they're driving home. So the groups of people didn't speak to each other at that point? No, there's no memory of that. Yeah. There was no, because what I always thought was, why didn't they all congregate together, everybody come together? But you're talking about a 100-metre distance between the people, and they've just gone across to the fence, probably looking at this beautiful object in the sky, and they could see little silhouettes standing in the windows of these orange, amber, giant lights looking out at them. Yeah. So when you think back to 1993, how sparsely populated it would have been here. It still looks really sparse, doesn't it? It does, comparatively, yeah.